Hi, and welcome to the ACT prep session on the science test and WorkKeys locating information. This was first delivered live on February 6th, that Friday. On the session there, we looked at the WorkKeys locating information test first, and we looked at some examples. We'll do that in just a moment of those types of questions. We also focus on the science test with an overview, and we'll look at some tips and strategies for tackling the science questions. And then following this video, if you choose, there's the Michigan Electronic Library.org or the MEL.org site has practice tests and so on, and we'll show you some of that as part of the video. First of all, some of the news that we shared at the beginning of the session, the dates of the ACT test. We've shared those several times, but here they are again, and it's getting closer. Tuesday, March 3rd will be the ACT tests, and then Wednesday, March 4th will be the WorkKeys tests. The pre-coding of answer booklets, by the time you view this, might have already happened at your partner high school, or it should be happening shortly. That takes a fair amount of time just to prepare the answer booklets for each of those tests, so you do that ahead of time. And the enrollment process is ongoing at the Middle College. The open house is now passed at the time that I record this. It was last Saturday, but we are still taking applications from 10th grade students. So if you have any friends or classmates or relatives that are in 10th grade and they might be interested in the Middle College, let them know, and they can turn in an application. This date says February 10th. That date has obviously passed, but for most of the schools, we can accept applications as late as March 31st. Okay, so now let's move forward on to the WorkKeys assessment. And we're going to talk today about the locating information test. It's one of the three assessments given on the WorkKeys day, and it's one of the three used for awarding the National Career Readiness Certificate. Locating information measures the skill people use when they work with workplace graphics, and you'll see what we mean about the graphics in just a minute. It says that you'll be asked to find information in a graphic or insert information into a graphic. You're going to have to be able to compare, summarize, and analyze information found in related graphics. Now, so what are we talking about when we talk about these graphics? Well, you'll see that it talks about workplace graphics such as charts, graphs, tables, forms, flowcharts, diagrams, floor plans, maps, and even instrument gauges. And these are all things that we come in contact with when you're in the workplace. And so this is a test to see how well you can gather information and use information from such graphics. What we'll do now is look at some examples of the locating information items, and I think you'll get a good idea of what we're talking about when we use the term graphics. So I'm going to exit out of the presentation right now. And I'm going to the ACT WorkKeys site, and to get here, actually I typed in, I'll do it again, act.org/workkeys, and that gets you to this page. If we scroll down a little bit, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, it'll make it a little bit bigger, I think, easier for you to see. But on the page over to the lower left, it says sample questions, and I'm going to click on that. At this point, we have to again click over here, sample questions, to allow us to choose locating information. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. And there are, I believe it goes to level 7 in terms of the questions. That's the highest level, most difficult question, and this is a level 3, which I believe is the lowest level question they have. And it's going to be difficult in the video to spend a lot of time on these, so I just want to kind of go through the different levels fairly quickly so you get a feel for the types of things you're going to be asked in the WorkKeys. So in this case, they have this graphic right here, which is an instrument gauge, and the question says, you regularly check the pressure gauge on a large tank. According to the gauge shown, what is the current pressure in PSI? And in this case, if you look, you can see that the dial is between 20 and 40, and obviously this line right here is halfway between 20 and 40, so that would be 30. So therefore, we know the pressure is between 30 and 40. So my thought is that the answer would be 35, and when you click on answer, it will indeed tell you the correct answer with a little explanation of why it's correct and why the other ones aren't if you did get it wrong. Okay. So again, this is hard to do in just a summary video. So let's just click on to the level 4. I'll show you another type of graphic, and we'll go through the others fairly quickly. This is a ticket for a laundry that a person taking in the laundry might fill out, and then you're asked, what does this person want done with their shirts? And so you would actually look at, are they laundered? Is it the laundry, or are they dry cleaned? And then in this case, how much starch and so on. So you have to be able to explain, based on this ticket, what did the customer want with this order. Okay, and then moving up to a level 5, this is a fairly difficult graphic. It takes a little time to work through. Again, we don't have really the time to do it here, but you can always go to the WorkKeys site and take your time and look at the question. But you can see this is a type of graph that we're not used to seeing normally in the classroom. But if you take your time, there is an example given, so that can help. And you analyze this. It relates to wind speed and something that pilots would need to have and be able to read. Okay, so that's level 5. And then level 6, which actually is the top level. I think I said level 7, but science does not, or locating information does not have a level 7 question. Another graphic that you're probably not used to seeing, but if you take your time, when you get these, you can figure them out. Like any test, you want to tackle the questions that you can answer quickly, like the gauge question. If you have to skip this, make sure that you circle the item in your test book so you know you want to come back to it. But you don't want to spend 10 minutes trying to figure out this one at the expense of some easier ones that you would get correct. So make sure you do those first and come back to this one. But this is a graphic on soil types. It's also combined with a table of information based on the graphic. And then there's some reading and information you have to do. And so definitely a high level of difficulty, but some of you will do just fine tackling this. Okay, so those are the different item types in the WorkKeys test. So I'm going to go back to the presentation now, and okay. Now let's focus in on the ACT science test. We'll use the Michigan Electronic Library site, the College Preparation Center, to do the following. Get an overview of the science test, learn about some tips and strategies for studying, not only on, how to take the test, but also how to prepare wisely for it. And then you can actually go on and view the full tutorial, or you can jump around in the tutorial. And then I definitely encourage you to take at least one of the practice ACT science tests so you can get a feel for the timing, how long it takes to complete the test, and so on. Just a few pieces of information that I put into the presentation before we go live to the Michigan Electronic Library site. It talks about the unit that you'll be, or you can choose to view, and it says it presents an overview of the test. It shares important reasoning skills and strategies, and it will familiarize you with the types of questions and passages found on the ACT science test. By the end of the unit, your skills will be sharp in all of these things. I'm not going to read them all. I'll leave it up here for a little bit. You will find this list actually in the tutorial. But these are the types of things that you're going to need to do with the different items in the ACT science test. Okay, again, you'll get a chance to see this list. Calculators are not used on the ACT science test. They're not needed, and you may not have them on your table when you're taking the ACT science test. Okay, so at this point now I'm going to exit back out of the presentation, and we're going to go to the Michigan Electronic Library homepage, and that is mel.org. Very simple URL, mel.org. And you guys are going to click on the Teens button. Okay, and then College Bound, because the ACT is a test designed to predict your readiness for various colleges, so we click on College Bound. When you get to this page, as we've said in previous videos, you're going to scroll down to the orange key here that says Learning Express Library in the College Preparation Center. and hopefully it will load for us. There we go. And we're in the College Preparation Center now, and you'll see right down in the lower left, it'll say prepare for your ACT test. Before we do that, I'm going to log in. If you have not already created an account because you've been here before, you're going to want to register if you're a new user. So you'll see in the lower right, you click on that, you'll enter a little bit of information. There's no cost to it, and you'll never get an email from them, but it allows you to log back in and continue a test that you might have started. So I'm going to log in, and it'll take me just a minute. If you try to register and it doesn't work the first time, just keep trying, be patient, and you can register with an email address or without. I think in either case it will allow you to use that login information to get back to your what they call My Center, or your center, where you can restart or resume tests that you might have started. Okay, so now I'm logged in. I'm going to click on the Prepare for Your ACT Test button. And just quickly, a few things on this page. Some of you are already familiar with this, but if this is your first video you're looking at, the default when you click on Prepare for Your ACT Test is the launching of the tutorial page right here. But I want you to notice over to the left, this is how you get to the practice tests. If you do nothing else over the next couple of weeks that we have before the ACT, I recommend taking one of the practice tests in each of the testing areas. They take anywhere from 35-40 minutes up to an hour for the math test. When I click on this ACT practice test, it gets me to the screen with the 4 ACT English practice tests. Each of the subject areas has 4 practice tests, and they're all full-length tests with the exact kind of items you'd find in the ACT. Since we're talking about science, to go there, I would click on up here where it says ACT Science Practice Tests, and then I could choose to start any of the science practice tests. Okay, just to show you a little bit about them, if I choose to launch the test, and they all look very similar. Over to the right, before you start the test, you can choose the test mode, and the default is the practice mode, where you will see answer explanations after you finish the test. The tests are timed, and you can see you have 35 minutes to complete the science test, but the timer will display, but when you run out of time, it won't stop the test. It says it will not be enforced. If you want the full simulation where the test will stop and you can get your score based on the number of minutes you have on a normal ACT, then click the simulation button, and when the time runs out, you'll be done. Okay, and then there's a learner example, which you view the answers to each question as you go along, so that helps you study and get some feedback right away. Okay, so I'm going to leave this on practice. I'm going to start the test just to show you. We're not going to go deep into it. It has the directions for the test. In this case, actually this is the first item, so you can see there's some reading that goes on about this, and then there'll be questions 1 through 6 will be based on this information and this data table. Okay, if you have an item that's just really sticking and you're not sure how to solve it right away, you can choose to skip the question. Okay, let's say I'm not sure about number 1, but I think that number 2 is B and number 3 is A, and so on. What you can do then is actually go up and jump. When I click on jump to question, it will show how many questions there are, which ones are already done. You'll see a checkbox in it. I can go back and change those if I want, but you'll see the open box means I chose to skip that one, and so I want to go back. Let me click on this, and it will get me right back to question 1, and then I can go ahead and submit an answer. Okay, when you're all done, or even before that, you can save and finish it later. It will show up in My Center, what they call it, later, or when you're all done, then you can click Score My Test, and it will show which ones you got right or wrong, and you can choose to see the right answers. And if you can see up here, you can see the timer. I had 35 minutes, and now I only have 33 minutes and 40 seconds. So, okay, so I am going to stop this and save it, I guess, and I want to go back to the tutorial, the College Prep Center, It put me back to my center actually. Okay, now back to the ACT. And the last segment of this video will take a few minutes to actually go into the tutorial so I can show you what it looks like for the ACT science test. It's really going to be up to you, like I've said in past videos, to dig into it and read the screens and try the practice tests and so on. But if this is the first time you've been to this site, again, I've clicked in, I'm now into the tutorial. You'll see there's a unit for each of the 5 tests, the English, writing, math, reading, and science. When you click on any of these, it expands into several lessons. So I clicked on this and it dropped these down, opened these up. And here's a little bit about the ACT science test. And again, this is that list that I showed you in the presentation slide. I'm now going to expand lesson 1. So when I click on the plus sign, you'll see that there's several sub-lessons and pages, if you will, that open up. So I clicked on the introduction. It's very brief. It talks about the course in general, so I'm not going to spend time on that. Here's a little information about the ACT science test. And again, this is more just to show you how the tutorial works and what's there. It's really up to you to put in the time and read this. There are some good pieces of information embedded in here. It says you have 40 minutes to complete 35 questions. So actually a little bit over a minute per question. Hopefully some you can get fairly quickly because it might take you some time to read the passages and look at the graphics and so on. Okay. And this is an important part. Right down here it says whether the passage is about biology, chemistry, earth and space science, or physics will not matter. You'll be provided with all the information you need right in the passage. Now, it lists some topics that they may have questions about, but they're never going to ask you, for example, the parts of the cell. They might have a labeled diagram, and then they might, ask you to use that information to answer something, but you don't have to go back and memorize, the elements of the periodic table and things like that. It's more using the information that's provided either in writing or through a graphic. Okay, so this lesson then goes on and it talks about the types of passages and questions that you'll see. As I mentioned, and we kind of saw in that example, the passages before the questions might be a single graphic or a passage, or a series of graphics or passages or any kind of combination. And that one item we looked at was there was some written information about experiments, and then there was a data table there. So that was a good example. And then there were several questions following it. It says with regard to science questions, the question following the graphic or passage may also include a separate graphic. So that could be part of the question itself. Answer choices might be in the form of graphics, a diagram or something. And it says the questions may include some math but do not require a calculator because they can't be used on the ACT. They would not expect students to have to use a calculator to get the right answer. And as with the other ACT tests, there is no penalty for guessing. So keep that in mind. When you're all done, if you've run out of time and there's still 5 items still to go, just guess. Put something down. Try to answer every question on the test. Okay, so now you can go through each of these. It goes into a little more depth on the types of questions you will see. Here's a link to test-taking strategies. This is actually a list. I'm not going to read it right now. You can take the time to do that, but it's a pretty good list of things to think about. So I encourage you to read that maybe before you start your studying on this test. Okay. I'm going to close the lesson 1, the overview, and just give you an example of one of these other lessons. I'm not going to go through all of them, but here, for example, is what you'll find in lesson 2, data representation. Again, there'll be an introduction, and then it will go into the different kinds of data that you might see, the different types of charts and so on. And a lot of them have sample questions embedded in the little lesson. So they're really kind of a valuable thing. Take some time, go through these. If you want to hit every one right after the other, you can use the next button up at the top. So I'm going to do that. And am I in the right spot? Maybe not. Hold on. Sorry about that. Okay. Now I'm in the section on data representation. I think if I click next now, there we go. So it'll talk in general about graphics. In this case, it's a table and what you can determine from it and so on. Again, way too much to read right here, but you can see the kinds of information. And in this case, there actually is a sample question to answer. So it kind of forces you to get in there and try to figure out how to get information from this graphic. Okay. And then if you compare, it says compare my response, it will actually show you, what the correct response would be, and then a little explanation of how they got it. All right. So going back up now, if we jump around, well, here's data representation, bar graph, so that's actually continuing. Here's some information on scatter plots. So you can see any of these things in the ACT science test, and if at least you look at it and spend a few minutes looking at this, it won't be as strange if you hit that during the test and you haven't seen one in your science or math classes in the last year or two. So I encourage you to go through here, and I guarantee if you do, it's going to help you pick up some points on your science test. There's a little quiz at the end of this lesson, and it's set up just like the practice test. It's just not that many items. If you want to know how many items it is, if you click on this section right here, it says jump to question. In this case, you'll see it's only 10 questions. Okay? But that's enough to give you a little bit of practice, specifically on these types of graphs and data representation. Once you finish the 10, then you can click score my test, and you can see how you did on each test. On each item rather, and you can see if you got the right answer, or if you didn't, why not, because it'll explain why the correct answer is what it is. Okay, so again, there's an example of the quiz, and then you would click next to get to the next questions. Okay, so I went back now, and we're again back in lesson 2 is where we were. There is a lesson on the research summaries, and then there's one on conflicting viewpoints. And so again, you're going to find items on the ACT science test with all 3 or 4 of these 3 types of questions rather. So it's important to kind of go through them all and get an idea of what they are. Okay? Each one has a little quiz, and then of course you have the 4 practice tests, which are full tests. The overall summary of the ACT science test is very brief. And, okay, so then it kind of basically directs you to go ahead and try to put it into practice. There is a unit quiz, which in this one has 20 questions. So again, all kinds of practice, and this is the way you're going to get better at this, just like in anything. It's going to take practice. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the ACT science prep. I encourage you to dig into it and go through the tutorial as much as you can, and at the very least take 1, maybe 2 of the practice tests. Okay, I think it'll be beneficial to you. Thanks.